Hello and welcome back to the channel. Huge thank you to the sponsors. Without you, this wouldn't be happening. And it is really for you that these videos are recorded. Thank you so much. I appreciate your support and your encouragement. Yesterday on the channel, there was a discussion on the sister channel, that is to say, there was a discussion in the group with the current builds of what is to be the next model for the group to build together in live stream. And it looks like Mayflower came out at the top of the voting. I hardly need telling you that, and those of you who know me by now already are expecting what I'm about to say. The simple truth is that Mayflower is a made-up ship. We do not know almost anything about the ship. We know, or we have an idea, vague idea, what the tonnage of the vessel was. And this is a dangerous piece of misinformation for a couple of reasons. First of all, well, perhaps this is the time to start with the fact that there is a difference in tonnage displacement, which is the modern way we measure vessels, and tonnage burden, the way they measured vessels back then. Tons burden is essentially an estimate of how many of specific type of cask can be fitted inside the hold area of the ship. Specifically, ton is the type of cask. It is a wine carrying cask. And the whole concept comes from the Middle Ages. The problem, of course, is that there is more than one way that you can estimate this volume. It is volumetric. It has nothing to do with the actual dimensions of the ship. It has nothing to do with how much the ship weighed. It doesn't really have much to do with how much weight the ship could carry. Only a rough estimate of how many such casks you could put inside. And the formulas changed over the years, and more than one formula was used sometimes at a time. There was a whole series of articles in the Mariner's Mirror many decades ago that were dealing specifically with the English system of tons burden, ton and tonnage. I will not go into them now, because obviously it will take too much time. Suffice it to say that there is no way. Basically, the formula involves different combinations and calculations of depth in hold, measured in different ways depending on the period, depending on the time, etc. Length in the hold, depth, and beam. And how these three are combined in the formula, this is what varied. So if you have the tonnage of a vessel, as we do for Mayflower, for Santa Maria and other similar phantom vessels, we are asked to solve an equation with three unknowns, having only the final answer. Now, I'm not a mathematician, I'm only a mere maritime archaeologist. But I did begin my life as an engineer, and as a shipwreck constructor, I do play with figures and calculations of displacement, etc. And I am not aware of any way in which you can produce conclusive answer, can solve conclusively an equation in which you have three unknowns, but you have only one equation, and you have only one figure, the answer. In other words, any another guess, you can combine these figures and achieve the 100 or 120 ton burden in any form or fashion that you want. You can produce any combination of figures that at the end will give you the 120. This does not mean that this has anything whatsoever to do with the real ship. Nothing whatsoever. So any construction of a model of Mayflower inevitably boils down to somebody's overactive imagination. I can produce you a Mayflower drawing that will end up with 100 to 120 tons burden. Doesn't mean that it will be a reused ship. So 9 out of 10 times, what we see being produced as Mayflower, or a model of Mayflower, luckily this is a model that gets less exposure in construction than Victory, than Santa Maria, Pinta Nina, and probably even less than Drake's Golden Hind, which is another imaginary vessel. But in this case, all models essentially boil down to William Baker's interpretation of the very limited data. He was a naval architect, so at least we do know that his idea floated. As he describes in this and his other book on sloops, shallops, etc., he essentially is basing the entire reconstruction of this on 2 manuscripts, neither of which is really contemporary. The one is the manuscript that eventually was published by Salisbury and Anderson, and the other one, of course, are the notes known as Elements of Ancient English Shipwrightry, held at Magdalen College in Cambridge. They belong to the Elizabethan, or Tudorian to be more exact, shipwright Matthew Baker. And others after that, possibly the mathematician was, have added towards the final pages after the death of Matthew Baker. He's a very interesting character. There is a lot to say about him. There is a lot to say about the manuscript itself, which is both beautiful, has been studied ad nauseum by some of the great historian minds of the 20th, especially early 20th century. But its direct linkage to a small, modest merchantman is more questionable, shall we say. So for anyone who chooses to build the Mayflower, and if the group decides really on a group build of the Mayflower, essentially you are producing a model of this ship, the Mayflower II, which is a model of William Baker's vessel. Nothing wrong with that if that's what you want to do. She exists. She even still floats, amazingly enough. We do know that Mayflower Mayflower II crossed the Atlantic in the 50s. It was built in Britain as a sort of a thank you to America for its contribution, for its saving essentially Great Britain. And there was one problem with it. The ship was an absolute pain in the neck to steer. She rode like a champion. If rowing was an Olympic sport, Mayflower II would have won it hands down, the gold medal. And she could not really be handled. In fact, for most of the voyage, she was steered with a steering wheel, which was not invented at the time of the Mayflower, and it would not be at least for another 80 years, possibly more like 90 years before the steering wheel emerged. Upon arrival in the United States, the steering wheel was removed, and the whipstaff was reinstalled in position, and that is how the ship is nowadays, displayed for the public. In recent years, she has underwent significant repairs, not quite a rebuilding, but very extensive repairs at Mystic Seaport Museum, at their shipyard. And these were the occasions when we had the opportunity to sail nearby her and to watch her under sail in the Fisher's Island Sound, and actually more like Long Island Sound around the race. It was truly joyful element to see. She does look quite pretty under sail. And let's face it, this is about as close as you're ever going to get to see something that at least outwardly resembles a 17th century ship. So by all means, if that's what you want, do go ahead and model her. The book is shown in detail on the SYSTER channel, where it is, well, there is a link to buy it down below. Enjoy it. One thing that I will have to say in support of this interpretation is that, unlike Susan Constant, Baker at least designed her with the proper style of framing. She's with open frames, overlapping frames, as ships were built all the way until pretty much the third quarter end of the 17th century. And that is a major plus. In the case of Susan Constant, her design may have been more accurate. It was essentially designed by Brian Lavery. So I'm willing to trust his interpretation of what she may have looked like. But as far as the framing construction, she is built with double sawn frame construction, which does not emerge until much later in the century. So, pick and choose, enjoy your construction. There is another one by Alexander Magoon. There is another interpretation of what Mayflower may have looked like. And as you can see, it does differ from the William Baker version of the ship. If I have to pick and choose between the two, I would go with Baker, partially because he designed it much later, in the 40s and 50s, while this one is from 1927, partially because he was much more competent than Magoon, and partially because it does resemble late 16th, early 17th century ship much more than this. There is a paging through Magoon's book also, on the SYSTER channel. You can go there and have a look at what is its content. Enjoy your construction. I'm looking forward to seeing these models, and no doubt I will come up with more harsh words to say about them. So thank you ever so much for watching, liking, commenting, and I shall see you soon again.